for truth.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and welcome to episode 44. 44. We got another Lou Elizondo episode today.
There's no mysterious numerology in 44, is there?
Don't know, actually. If you do, let us know.
Yeah, we got some more Lou. We got some more random videos.
Yeah, I got an interesting article by Hal Puthoff.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You were telling me about that.
So that'll be fun to cover.
And I don't know if you wanted to talk about it, but there was a recent, like you were telling me, the recent Graham Hancock
there's
response to Flint Dibble's video.
Yeah.
Or all of his evidence
this week,
presented
at least as of the week we're recording this, there was a release of Flint Dibble on the Danny Jones podcast, and I haven't watched that one yet myself.
I started it. Yeah, nothing really to say about it yet, but...
And then... Funny how it happened on the same week, but Graham also released a video on his YouTube channel responding to his debate with Flint on the Joe Rogan
Has he
episode.
been pretty quiet on it since, otherwise? I
I
haven't heard much from him or about what he's been thought of, how it went,
Yeah, I don't know. He might just be busy, producing his next, season.
Netflix.
Yeah.
With Keanu Reeves.
Oh, did Keanu hop on board? Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
He's a part of season 2, apparently.
Sick. That's
and
awesome.
There's people who are like roasting him for getting like a celebrity who may have some experience with some aspect of this whole thing, but is likely not an expert.
Sure, but
it's name recognition. And
name recognition is great. If that gets more people to want to watch it, I'm all for
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it works. He understands that, like, you get somebody who's recognizable to come in and share some sort of, anecdote about that they've had in their own life about the topic or whatever.
I mean, that's why he had Joe Rogan on the first season, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Same idea.
And Joe was happy to do it, which he wouldn't have done probably had he not been asked. Like, it wasn't probably like Joe's first idea to go be a part of it, but he was asked, and he understood that too. Like, you get people's attention.
Anyway, so the main thing he's responding to on that video, and I'll leave a link. The main thing he's responding to is, well, there's a couple things, but the first chunk of it is his responding to Flint Dibble's points about underwater archaeology. And if you recall in the Joe Rogan debate, Graham was always complaining that the only resources that go towards underwater archaeology, like the vast chunk of it, is all for investigating shipwrecks. And then Flint turned that point around as like, well, here's the thing, Graham, is that we've got 3 million shipwrecks, and
we're too busy.
Well, and that
they're trying to like
the bottom of the ocean is actually really good at preserving things, and so it's actually a perfect scenario. So if your civilization existed, where are their ships? We should be finding their ships.
He's basically saying that it's like confirmed by science that being anything underwater is just going to last forever.
Right, except and what Graham says in this is that Flint, being like a trained archaeologist, he's giving him the benefit of the doubt in that, when he says something so confidently and forthright, that he's just going to take his word for it. And that's what he did that night on the debate. But in the time since, he's looked into it, and that basically the argument falls apart. And there's another series or
Is it
YouTube
specifically
channel,
about the
the
stuff being
debunking
preserved?
guy. Have you seen that guy's YouTube?
I've seen the YouTube, yeah. Not on this, but
I'll leave a link to some of his stuff because he does a whole series about the underwater archaeology as well. But anyway, the point Graham makes is that, first off, we don't have 4 million shipwrecks. We have something like 200,000 or 300,000. He claimed we had 4,000 mapped, but we haven't actually excavated
the sites.
or 4 million. We haven't actually excavated 4 million. And I'm pretty sure that 4 million number, well, based on whatever Graham was saying, like that number is in question, and it's not really what Flint
not
was
solid.
portraying it as.
Well, I do remember from the debate that in that section that when they were talking about that, he was mentioning the sites. Like he was mentioning like shipwrecks, but also other like coastal phenomena, like things that you would find when you're scouring the coast, like in water, out of water, right on the coastline. Like, so the 4 million could have been all sorts of sites if you included like maybe everything instead of just shipwrecks. So that it could be one of those situations where like it depends on what exactly you're talking about that you could like.
It could be. So anyway, Graham brings question to the 4 million claim. But then he also goes further and he finds the proof that basically their modern archaeology in accepted archaeological journals, and he shows a bunch of like journal articles to back it up, are showing that places like Australia were peopled before 50,000 years ago. Or like a long time ago, before the Ice Age, or into the Ice Age.
Into the Ice Age.
Yeah, like it. Yeah, Australia was already peopled before the Ice Age ended.
Because that was in like, I mean, during the Ice Age, there was still parts of land, and that was in one of those zones, right, where it was like
right. So in the Ice Age, because the water levels would have been lower,
right,
that's when
island would have been huge.
You get the Sunda area,
Sunda Shelf area.
Yeah, but there's still like 100 kilometers of sea that you have to cross to get to Australia,
right?
Which requires like full ocean-going vessels, and
they could have gone to South America too.
He also points out Crete,
they had ocean.
like even in the Mediterranean with the different water levels, Crete still would have been an island and would have required like 50 kilometers of ability to cross. And then they talk about how the modern archaeologists talk about if it was just like some people, like a small group of people going across, like they likely wouldn't have survived. They would have had to bring significant like breeding numbers in order to like have a true like successful population. And Graham's point is that sounds a lot like the work of a civilization, not the work of some, Ice Age hunter-gatherers.
Or if you go to a more far-fetched idea, it's Australia has always been a prison planet. People were being placed there, not willfully going.
Yeah, they're dropping people off even back then.
Yeah,
that's funny. So that's one point he makes is that like there is actual proof, even though we don't have the vessels from the Ice Age. We know that seafaring was happening back then.
Had to have been, yeah.
It had to have been.
Unless there was some sort of other
and no archaeologist
land bridge or something
makes the argument that because we don't find the shipwrecks, that therefore it didn't happen. We know it happened based on other lines of evidence. And so they had to have been able to cross. And crossing during the height of the Ice Age would have made it as easy as possible. The problem is it also like plays into Graham's theory because that's a big undertaking.
Yeah, especially when you're not supposed to be all that thriving. Like unless there's probably belts where it's like really lush and like really plentiful. And
I mean,
stuff,
if you're
but we're
talking
still
about crossing 100 kilometers of open sea, like you're not just figuring out boats.
No.
You already have to
some
understand how that
navigation,
works.
You know, like yeah. It's interesting.
But then he also shows that he started looking to try and find what are, like, of all the shipwrecks that have been found, what are the oldest ones. And he points out like 2 or 3 of the actual oldest ones we've ever found. And what he found is that they're only about 3,000 to 4,000 years old, something like that, in that neighborhood, and that all the organic matter had decomposed. All of it was gone, and only some of the cargo that was non-biodegradable was left, like some pottery. And that's how they know it was a shipwreck there. There was nothing of the boat left. And so Flint's point that it would last is not actually true.
It's just that it lasts enough. There's something in some of the cases where there's pottery or whatever. But imagine there's got to be some of them where it's just all wood.
Well, that's
especially even further back, right? So those
the
would
boats
just be gone.
wood, but they're gone.
That's what I mean.
They just happen to have cargo that was non-biodegradable.
Go back farther though,
right?
And they may not have had the pottery yet, so there could be so much older.
Or it would have been covered up by ocean sediment by that far back anyway.
Right.
So it's hard to say, but he essentially is disproving Flint's argument that the ocean would have been a perfect preservative, and we would actually find ice age boats if they had existed. We should have been finding them. What Graham is showing is no, we wouldn't find them. They would have long biodegraded away. They would have long ago been.
Yeah, I mean, especially if like only 3,000 years ago, you're already getting fully biodegraded ships. So, I say only as if it's like yesterday, but
yeah. And then he spends another part of the video talking about what was it? I lost it. Well, he spends part of the video talking about like the personal attacks and the like calling him racist, and that's the part I'm least interested in because it's more about Graham's ego, stuff. But it's also bad form for Flint, and so I get Graham doing it. But
I
as a viewer, I'm less interested.
I think he needs to separate those two things and not do it in the videos where he's trying to convey the information.
Right. Let's separate the personal stuff from the like.
Go ahead and do like a separate post on your Instagram or Facebook.
I mean, I get it because it's literally being used as a direct weapon to get people to not listen to Graham. So.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Then maybe he should just have like an intro, a quick intro. I am not racist.
Well, he does save it for the end of the video.
That's true. So people could click away at that by that point if they need to.
And then there was the other thing I was telling you last night, but it's just slipped my mind. The other thing that they talked about. But whatever, if it comes to me.
I will say Flynn's the strongest point he was making was about the agricultural stuff.
Well, that was the point that was newest to me, but I don't know its strength as disproving an ice age. This was the other thing.
The seeds and stuff, and how they were,
how you can tell
we almost debunked that without needing any like formal training as far as like. But how we know that it resets.
We know that they can rewild.
Yeah, so we know that could have happened, and he didn't really seem like he put a firm date on how long it takes. It's more situational, it seems like, right? Like if it's more of an abrupt stop, maybe it transforms back quicker because it has to. Like there's no other way. But if there's more of a gradual, like they just aren't. They're not doing it as much. So some stuff is gonna rewild, and maybe the population dwindled, so they didn't need to do it as often with as many plants. So some of it rewild and some of it stayed. But anyway.
Yeah. The other thing Graham brings up is there's one point in the episode in the debate where Flint pulls up this graphic, and it's a graph, and it's showing detection of metals in ice core samples up in the Arctic.
Yeah, okay. I think I do remember you saying a little bit about this.
Yeah, and so what Flint was saying is that you can look in the ice cores, and when humans have metallurgy, we do things like we mine metals that puts metal dust in the air. We do smelting and, blacksmithing, and that puts metal dust in the air, and that metal dust gets embedded into the
soil.
Well, into the glaciers into the ice cores.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're then detectable. So he showed that, and he explained, and he showed this graph, and he explained that we have no evidence for metallurgy in the Ice Age. So Graham found that exact chart, and he was like, he broke it down and he showed it, and it literally doesn't actually show the time of the Ice Age on that chart.
Oh, really?
That chart that he used in his debate didn't actually study the Ice Age. It was more modern than that.
Yeah.
So it was not proof against ancient civilization. So then Graham goes and looks into the literature on it, and he finds charts that actually do show the Ice Age. And guess what? There's high metal content in the Ice Age. And then, I guess part of this happened over the internet since then. And then so Flint came back saying that I think this is where the debunking guy came in, and Graham had kind of like followed this part. So the debunking guy ended up asking one of the scientists who was doing the ice core work about the search they were doing in those ice core samples for the metals.
Okay.
And so it turns out that evidence for metallurgy is different from evidence of metals.
Okay. Just metals in general, like being present.
There are other reasons why you would have metals in the ice cores other than metallurgy. Different signatures and whatnot, like maybe volcanic activity or comets or whatever, right?
Something like coming and hitting and shooting a bunch of stuff into the...
So he said, well, what is the signature for metallurgy, like human metallurgy? And they said lead. And so he was like, well, did you guys test for lead? And he's like, no, we weren't looking for human metallurgy. We were looking for other things.
Like
and
comments.
So we didn't actually test for lead in this example.
So nobody really knows.
Right. So,
somebody doing
but this was like an exchange on Twitter, and then Flint comes in and notices the exchange, and he comes in and is like, yo, this guy's a YouTuber pseudoscientist.
No way.
Yeah. Trying to like tell the freaking scientist not to talk to this guy.
Are you kidding me?
Anyway, so Graham still like picks up the case, and he's still looking at other studies, and it turns out there are studies that show lead, but it just wasn't that one. And there is evidence of lead.
Wow.
So
that's metallurgy. Just opposed to, as far as they're concerned.
Right. I mean, there could be more complicated than that. And obviously I'm not well versed on all the science, and I'm just hearing this myself and reporting it from his video.
We're not getting it from first-hand knowledge yet.
Anyway, check out Graham's video because it's pretty interesting.
And check out Flint's too.
I haven't checked Flint's interview yet.
Yeah, check out Flint's.
So I wanna see what he has to say about the whole thing, because I know Danny's a big ancient civilization guy himself.
I think he'll do a good job of hopefully
representing that side of things.
Yeah.
But
hopefully.
Anyway, so that was
we went on a longer tangent about Graham. He always brings it up though.
Right.
I can't wait for his season 2.
That,
see what he's doing the Americas in the season 2.
Is he?
Mm-hmm. He's covering America before stuff.
Have they done a preview yet?
There's like there's like a trailer if you want to watch it on here real quick.
Yeah, let's do that.
Ancient Apocalypse trailer. Yo.
This one?
I'm sure you can find a better one. Scroll down to the Netflix one. Yeah,
Oh, there's a Netflix
the
one.
America
This
one.
one's sneak peek.
Yeah.
For those who don't know me, I'm Graham Hancock.
I've been exploring the possibility of a lost civilization in prehistory for more than 30 years. Archaeology claims that if there were such a thing as a lost civilization, they would have found it already. Well, I profoundly disagree with that.
And now my quest continues. In a part of the world often overlooked by historians of humanity's origins.
The oldest dates that we got were about 13,200 before present.
Exploring some of the world's most intriguing ancient wonders.
There's numerology, there's mathematics, there's astronomy.
This could be considered lost technology.
And making new discoveries.
Wow.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
I mean, as a kid, I always thought the timeline was off.
All with a radical new
Gotta believe
proposition.
Neo.
Could the key to discovering a lost civilization of the Ice Age lie here? In the Americas?
October 16th. That's almost out.
Couple days.
Dude. All right. I'm
So
excited.
this will actually be posted after,
Yeah, this episode will come out after.
just after the beginning.
It's already
of that.
dropped. But if you still haven't seen it yet, then you need to. Dude, I'm excited. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have something more to talk about. More easy show prep. Oops.
Cool.
Heck yeah. So the other thing I wanted to mention, and we're not going to cover it in as much depth because we're doing his whole book, is Jesse Michaels' YouTube channel did a full interview, 2-hour documentary interview with Lou Elizondo. So
Yeah, and the way he does it is he has multiple conversations over multiple days or weeks or months or however long it takes. And then he waits until he has all the footage he thinks he needs for it and then stitches it all together into this 2-hour now documentary.
Yeah. One of the cool things about it is one of the places they do an interview is at this Masonic temple in Washington, D.C.
Oh, is that where it's at?
Yeah, and this groundskeeper who's meant to watch over the place, turns out he's one of the last living eyewitnesses of the 1952 UFOs over Washington, D.C. And so Lou and Jesse are both like, heck yeah. So they end up sitting down and interviewing him about it.
Yeah, the very beginning of the episode. Basically, once he goes through his whole intro stuff, it starts with him and his story. It's pretty cool.
So, yeah, check out that video. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Lou's enigmatic and mysterious as always, but he also, I think he gives a little bit more tidbits, and Jesse's pretty good about picking up those things and like making a decent theory out of it. Like with the
Jesse does
questions he asks and stuff.
He does a good job of like talking around the things that Lou can't say.
Yeah.
And getting Lou to at least comment on them, if not
confirm,
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
so
absolutely. He's really good at that.
But Lou is very purposefully like avoids stating his opinion.
Yes. Because I mean, yeah, I think that's probably what he would get in the most trouble for too, because once he knows certain things, so his opinion is not opinion and on certain aspects of it, it's fact.
Right.
So that's where he's probably just like, keep myself to what I can be mysterious about. Because otherwise he'll get himself, if he makes a comment about something that he knows factually, like he wants people to know that information, but he knows that he'll be disappeared if he does.
All right, and then Drew saved this video. It's a little bit of UFO talk from Elon Musk interview by Tucker Carlson. So let's check this out.
When you say, what are the aliens? What do you mean?
Where are the aliens? Oh, like, why don't we see them? A lot of people think we see aliens, but I have not seen any evidence of aliens. We've got 6,000 satellites in orbit, and not once have we had to maneuver around an alien spacecraft. Right.
But on this Earth, the U.S. military's had to do a lot of maneuvering around objects they can't explain.
Well, unidentified flying objects is one thing, but there's always a bunch of classified programs that are underway of new aircraft and new missiles and things. So that are classified even within the military. So it's only if you have the top secret compartmented clearance, would you know about this new program? So then, some pilot sees something moving fast and says, "Hey, I saw a UFO." I'm like, "Yeah, that was actually a new weapons program, but we can't tell you that." But you can guarantee that the split second I see any evidence of aliens, I will immediately post that on the X platform. And it'll probably be our #1 post of all time.
That'll be your biggest day, for sure.
All right, so
I'm less for his take because I've heard his take before.
Yeah,
and more for like what he does say as far as like the compartmented, and he has U.S. contracts, so he is privy to some things. I'm sure, at least loosely, like he can see what the structure behind the compartmented information is.
Well, as someone who himself has a ton of satellites in orbit and may be able to detect classified government craft, as someone who's launching rockets through airspace, who needs to know that the airspace is clear and plot out a flight plan, he probably has some insider information that he's not allowed to talk about, right? Like he's obviously going to be subject to a non-disclosure himself.
And he might not see the or he may be more concerned with like getting maybe knowing the information is a way of driving him to get people on Mars, get people off the planet.
Right. But
whatever.
Also, Elon is a creature of the internet, and he doesn't live under a rock. And so he's read the 2017 New York Times article. He's seen the Tic Tac and Gimbal and Go Fast videos. And if his read is that these are classified military craft, that's pretty interesting too.
Right. And he keeps harping on, I've not seen any of the evidence for the life of aliens, like aliens specifically. He didn't say UFOs. And when UFOs were brought up, he was like, UFOs are a totally different thing.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's probably UFOs and it's classified government programs. Where they got the technology, we don't know.
Right.
That's the question. That's what the $1 million question is. Is this organic development or is this some sort of...
I mean, if you consider like the trajectory of science from 1900 through the 50s, like
getting somebody on the moon in the late 60s, early 70s.
Well, no, even before that, like the trajectory of Einstein and relativity and all of this, like huge breakthroughs in physics, and then this like startup of like anti-gravity research, and then it all going black and disappearing, right? And all that before the real,
in science
before
knowledge.
the
And,
Saturn program started at NASA. So, it very well could be like an actual natural progression of technology, but it got classified.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
it got put behind that lock and key wall where only the privileged are allowed to know.
Right.
And you could work within it, and you just got to know you can't say a damn thing. There's nothing you can, and the people like the president and Congress are not privy to this information because, by and large, they're temporary to the structure that is.
Yeah. So
America.
Here's the thing. If classified technology, this is what's so weird about Elon saying this, because if classified technology accounts for UFOs, then what about the observables of UFOs? What about the instantaneous zipping, the multi
or the blipping
medium
through
the multi-medium travel, the crazy high G turns that would liquefy a human. All of this is evidence of essentially gravitic technology, something that can manipulate what the inertia you would experience inside the craft. So
you kind of have to admit that they have access to that technology without anybody in the private sector not knowing about it.
Which is a weird thing to admit if you're Elon Musk putting together an old school style chemical rocket program.
While knowing that information.
While knowing that there is classified stuff that could zip us to the moon in 2 minutes, you're sitting here putting together these billion-dollar spacecraft that harness giant chemical explosions the old-fashioned way.
So maybe he's not as privy.
Wouldn't he be pissed off that he couldn't be using this technology to get us to Mars next week?
All right. So yeah, I mean,
that's a weird
the type of personality
coming from Musk.
Yeah.
Because there's huge implications for those UFOs being government technology.
He must be just discounting the capabilities of the things he's seen. As far as the video, he's underplaying their capabilities.
Or he just understands that the government will not, refuses to actually use this technology for anything useful.
Maybe just other than
Elon,
testing.
being the person he is, knows we still, regardless of whether they're going to release this or not, we have to become a multi-planetary species yesterday. So, this is the mission, and if I can't do it with the new tech, I'm going to do it with the old tech.
Till the day that they release it, and then...
Right. But
and that's why
that's kind of... He has to think something along that line, right?
I don't know. I feel like increasingly
if he actually thinks those are... That's top secret tech.
Increasingly so, he seems to be speeding along this push towards AI and robotics as much as he was warning about it. Mm-hmm. Because you saw his new launches recently. He's got the bus,
right, and
the bus, and then the
taxi,
and then the new robots. What do they call them? Space or Tesla bots or whatever.
Yeah, I forget what they're called.
I think there's something like that.
Yeah, I think it's just
Tesla
bots or something.
Somebody did a side-by-side comparison from his unveiling to the same type of vehicles you see in the movie iRobot with Will Smith. Mm-hmm. It's so crazy with the robots looking humanoid and then his looking less humanoid but very similar, getting to the point where I think nobody really wants the uncanny.
He watches movies and he...
Oh, of course he's making references.
He's trying to be that guy that makes the sci-fi real.
Yeah, but it's still he's one of the largest proponents.
Yeah, interesting.
Apple apparently was working on there was some, I think it was either the robots or an automatic taxi or something like that. And apparently they just completely scrapped the program once they saw that he had released something.
They had a whole car program that they had been working on for quite a while, and they sort of scrapped it, changed it anyway. It may be that they're trying to go at it from a different angle. They still have that department, but like the rumors of them actually like building an Apple car doesn't seem to be what they're trying to do anymore. So they might be trying to work on the technology stack. They might be trying to own the entertainment system. They might be trying to sell some of the core technology that makes that stuff possible, but they don't seem to be.
Like you get a car that's like fully sponsored and has everything. Like it has like a MacBook as the dashboard, or like a touch home as the computer for the car, and then you got like the speakers that are theirs and all that stuff, and then you got the CarPlay like integrated into it, so you can have a full access to your entire computer and
they already launched their new version of CarPlay, which can take over the entire instrument panel.
Oh, that's crazy.
Not very many cars support it yet, but yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, we are over. Let's take a quick break, and then we got a couple more short videos before we go into Lou Elizondo. So enjoy this by Stevie Nader. It's called MF Dream. This is the acoustic version.
Send your name into the atmosphere. Slept for days, induced my utmost fear. Went around the world and ate a flag. We tried to raise the sun and dreamt out loud, unfurled a shaded past, realigned to save the love. Dove inside the jewel-encrusted sea, 20,000 leagues below. Dozing eyes and duel in custody, send me out and leaves afloat. Send your name into the atmosphere, 'cause I was looking for you. Slept for days, induced my utmost fear, 'cause I mistook life for true. Yeah, 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 I mistook life for true.
Welcome to Duality Check podcast.
Yeah, that is our song.
Yeah. Well, that's what we sampled for our song.
That's right.
Cool. So
We're back.
Hope you enjoyed that.
We're back.
Got another video Drew sent here. So let's
So
see.
yeah,
what
this
he's-
one is well, let's just watch it.
Okay.
You saw one get shot down?
I saw the video. Sure did.
Is this one that we all know about?
Some people do. You won't find it. It's been scrubbed, but...
And what was it shot down by?
The video I saw was, you see I get a little nervous here. What I saw was when this rocket left over the Pacific coast. I think it was launched out of Vandenberg. When it went up out of, started over, all of a sudden this little flying saucer appears. Flies right up to it, intercepts it as it's going 15,000 miles an hour. Flies around it, and a little white laser beam comes out and shoots it from every side. As it's going around it at 15,000 miles an hour, suddenly the whole rocket malfunctions, doesn't blow up, just quits and tumbles out to the sea.
Yeah, I remember this part of the podcast, and yeah, I remember.
And then
people
we got the
talking about
video
that.
stitched to it. I've seen that video
Is that
elsewhere.
supposedly that?
That's
the
supposedly that
real
encounter.
video?
Yeah.
Huh.
I've seen that video before. It was an infrared one, just like that. This video of the rocket going up, I don't know. I think that's...
Well, yeah, not this one,
Yeah.
but the one of the like laser shooting.
Mm-hmm. It's like a beam, yeah, some sort of beam.
Huh. Yeah,
But I've heard-
I don't know if
I've heard it
that's the
circulated,
authentic
and I don't know if
footage or
it's-
not, but
I don't
I've
know if
heard
that's-
about that story even before Chris
I've seen
Bledsoe.
that video before, and it was talking about the same thing,
Mhm.
like whatever was written with it, the
Yeah.
description of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting because it's Chris Bledsoe's, account of something similar. At least I don't know if it's fully confirmed that whatever video you might find would be of the same exact incident, but
Yeah, people are saying they saw this video before, so yeah, I think this is the one.
that's the one that it looked like I saw. So
I thought I saw it too way back in the day.
It's
like
been a while.
OG
When
YouTube days.
well, yeah, I mean the encounter probably happened a while ago.
Yeah.
Before YouTube was huge.
So yeah, this is obviously in respect to the idea of, UFOs being able to go and like disable, nukes. So there's some interesting
and their interest around missiles and weapon tech and
Right.
their supposed capabilities of shutting down or launching nuclear strikes without
Right.
needing like physical access.
So if Elon Musk is right and all UFOs are just government tech, then
it's pretty nefarious. Like the capabilities, showing off those capabilities.
well, the implications are pretty big for like Cold War theory, like
why
like
we've been-
nuclear theory, like the whole idea of mutually assured destruction is sort of what has kept relative peace.
Yeah.
Because
You
if
don't
we
want
ever
to
go to direct war with Russia, like we could, it could escalate, right? And there could be literally thousands of nukes in the sky, right? But if you have a fleet of UFOs that can zip around at ridiculous speeds and intercept and disable them all, that would
change the field quite a bit.
Change the nature of how you act geopolitically, if that is true.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if it is, under the theory that it is all government tech, then either they don't have a big enough fleet yet, or they don't have the technology mastered yet, or something. Because I feel like if they did, like the crazy like neocon warhawk types in government would have
been wanting to use it for
invaded Russia a long time ago, right?
and done whatever they wanted, really.
Yeah. So maybe that is part of the thinking behind the like belligerent political behavior that the U.S. is engaged in nationally, internationally. But
that's true. But you did. I mean, the way to. I don't know. I mean, to assign, intention, but like keeping it secret doesn't seem too good for us. Like,
right.
It seems like when it comes out, they have the full total control.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that was the case, that it was government tech, and they've been holding on to it, I don't know what they would use and why they haven't done anything with it.
Well, I would
Unless
presume,
they are doing
if there's literally
we don't
thousands and thousands of nukes in the sky, you would have to have a sufficient force, even if those things could fly fast, to be able to disable, right, everything while it's in flight. And you still wouldn't necessarily want to put yourself in a situation, because what if you miss some, right? Like, but so you would have to have a high degree of confidence in that as a deterrent. But. And then on the other side, if UFOs represent something non-governmental, non-known human capability, maybe there is a reverse engineering program, but maybe we don't have it all figured out yet. And maybe that was, represented some sort of non-human or future human or alternate existence from us. Then
you wouldn't want to come out with the information until you could actually do something with it, really.
But if they actually have the ability to just shoot down stuff like that, that has its own implications for,
the nature of it,
intergovernmental relationships and whatnot regarding nuclear technology. I mean,
it would. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you would really need to know the whole story before you can.
What effect does that have strategically for all your nuclear planning when you have events like UFOs coming outside your silo, deactivating your nukes, or elsewhere
do it without
activating them?
Yeah.
Like, what does that do to your nuclear strategy?
Well, it could also be said, like, if it's an outside force, right, it's not governments doing this and all governments are susceptible to it, then, like, getting rid of the nukes, going to some other form of mutually assured destruction, or everybody just gets one.
Where was it I heard it? I think it was on the Matthew Pine interview that I watched, that I linked previously. I guess I'll link it again. I think it was from that, but what he talked about was something interesting, that essentially the governments had everything was had been moving to digital and stuff, and that they essentially went back and retrofitted all the nuclear technology back to analog after these incidents.
They didn't want it to be hooked into the system,
as a measure to prevent them from being tampered with.
Right, which makes sense.
Yeah,
keep it local.
Well, if there's one technology that can be manipulated by a craft outside your facility, and there's another technology that can't, even if it's quote unquote low tech, that's the technology you're going to use if it can't be messed with as easily.
Okay.
Interesting. All right. So then we got our weekly dose of Bashar here.
Yeah.
Let's see what he's got to say to us today.
Do we live in a simulated reality? You're the one creating it. So in a sense, yes. Okay. Can you elaborate a little more? You are simply consciousness. Everything that's going on that you think is external is happening in your consciousness. There is no outside. Not really. Isn't that a simulation?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Okay, next question. You said we're third density beings.
You are moving into fourth density, yes.
That is ascension?
Yes.
And I've noticed a disassociation with some of my friends and family.
Yes. A natural symptom of moving into a different frequency that they may not choose to be compatible with.
And I would just like to make a statement here.
All right.
At first I was afraid of it, but I continued along the path because, I don't know, some part of me felt it was right.
All right.
And then I saw my friends and family changing in a more positive way.
All right. What you saw was, again, you shifting to a reality where the versions of them that exist in that reality are more in alignment with the changes you made within yourself. It's not the same individuals.
And I want to know how I could amplify that frequency.
Keep acting on your highest excitement to the best of your ability with absolutely no insistence on the outcome. That's the only formula that's necessary. If you don't want to believe it's that simple, you don't have to, but it is.
Okay.
Does that help you?
Yeah. Do we live?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I want to get more insight on his idea of the third and fourth densities he talks about. Like, what does that entail?
Yeah.
Other than just like a density change, unless that's it, and you just are moving to a different frequency, so everything on the lower frequency gets lost.
There are some longer interviews. Maybe we should do a whole episode.
Yeah, I'll put one together. I'll pick one out that I want people to see, like him actually coming into Daryl Anka's body, like his little intro that he does.
Yeah. This one's an hour and a half. Deconstructing sentience.
Yeah, there's ones where Daryl himself will talk about a lot of the stuff he's learned from
Oh,
Bashar.
Danica Patrick has an episode with them. I've been listening to some of hers.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
I've
Interesting.
seen a couple of her videos. It's so interesting, all the different people who are getting into podcasting. Like, as far as like former, NASCAR racers and everything.
Yeah. All right. Shall we get into some Lou?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So I think we pretty much left off talking about that Eric Davis memo and like Lou's commentary about it. The Wilson Davis memo.
Yep. Yeah, we finished on his remarks.
Yeah. So we can pick up from there. And here he's talking about going into a skiff with Hal put off. And
this is while he's still a part of the program and everything.
Yeah. Remember, he's still like new to the program. He's still getting
early stages.
onboarded.
Yeah.
Right. So it was his going into the skiff with Eric Davis that brought up the whole Wilson Davis memo. And
That's right. But now he's in one with
Hal.
in
one with Hal that he's going to talk about here a bit. I don't recall how my first UAP history lesson in a skiff with Hal began, but I remember Hal tossing off the most enticing one-liner I'd ever heard. Well, it all goes back to Roswell, 1947. Wait, what?
Classic.
Roswell was real? I asked. Hal looked at me, clearly weighing whether to bring me further into his circle of trust. Yes, Lou, it was real. You mean to tell me that UAP actually crashed and we covered it up? That's exactly what happened, he replied. I went quiet and let his words sink in. Hal went on to tell me something else that truly blew my mind. 4 deceased non-human bodies were in fact recovered from the 1947 Roswell crash. After processing that, I fired off a slew of questions in head, out mouth. Have we recovered non-human bodies from other UAP crashes? He looked at me as if debating how to answer. It was clear to me he wasn't ready to tell me the answer. I was still the new guy. We'll tell you more soon enough, he said. Is every incoming president told the truth? No. Well, what about Congress? What about the Gang of Eight? I said, referring to the legendary bipartisan group of political leaders supposedly charged with knowing all of America's black programs. Hal explained, the sad truth is DOD regards presidents, elected officials, and political appointees as temporary hires. They do not need to know since they will not be in their position for very long. Unless something happens or... Oh, shoot, why'd I do that?
Back when
Yeah,
I think.
unless something happens or they really push for it, U.S. presidents do not get briefed, and those who have been briefed have only been given the most basic information. Like Neo in the movie The Matrix, I inhaled that red pill. Tell me more. That's when I started to learn about the U.S. government's secret history with UAP. At the dawn of the nuclear age, UAP started appearing in greater numbers, and sometimes they crashed. Roswell was one of those incidents. A UAP fell that day in the vicinity of a government test facility in New Mexico and broke into 2 crash sites. At first, government investigators assumed that Roswell craft were from another nation, possibly some sort of reconnaissance mission gone awry. But within hours, the U.S. Army realized the truth, that these craft were not made by humans. It was hypothesized that the UAP that crashed at Roswell had been conducting some sort of reconnaissance on our budding atomic program. When the unexpected happened, an electromagnetic pulse generated from one of the nearby test ranges had inadvertently intervened with the craft's technology, causing it to crash. Though a flying saucer story had already spread widely in the media, some days later, the government disseminated a cover story about recovering nothing more than a harmless weather balloon. To convince the public, they trotted out pieces of mylar for journalists to photograph. For years later, the government claimed that the downed craft was part of Project Mogul, an early attempt by the U.S. Army Air Corps to detect Soviet atomic testing by affixing microphones to high-altitude balloons. The government has revised the Roswell cover story at least twice more, ensuring in the ensuing 70-odd years, replacing the first lie with more clever lies. Roswell codified how this nation and all others would react to future UAP incidents going forward. The government scripted the universal UAP playbook in the hours and days following that first mysterious incident in New Mexico. Number 1, admit nothing, deny everything. Number 2, make counter accusations. Number 3, retrieve the pieces of the crashed craft. Number 4, whisk the retrieved materials away to an undisclosed locations. Number 5, work in secret to reverse engineer this vastly superior technology. Lock down all scientists and engineers who come near the recovered wreckage. Number 6, intimidate witnesses into saying nothing. Discredit those who don't play along. Make them look crazy. Paint abductees as country bumpkins or glory-seeking frauds. Stigmatize outside researchers who attempt to intelligently glean truth. Stigmatize the topic. Number 7, threaten anyone who says who utters a single word about this topic with the U.S. Espionage Act, and promise to execute anyone who defies their secrecy oath by reminding them of what happened to Julius and Ethel Rosenberg for selling atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. Deny, deny, deny. Create and increase a stigma that will prevent disclosure.
Yeah.
Yep.
That pretty much sums up what we've been seeing.
Ain't that the truth of it, though?
Damn.
Can you imagine, like, you get recruited to some government program and you're like, well, it all started at Roswell. That's crazy. That would be pretty mind-blowing to, like, live through.
Yeah, I mean, the only counter that my brain is coming up with right now is that program, that thing was meant to get people to, like, the X-Files thing, like the X-Files example of Mulder going crazy by all this evidence, and it was all just fabricated, you know, as far as he came to understand that it was all fabricated to lead him down this thing. And I don't know, it's just like you could even see like him, I mean, he having been the person to work on a lot of these things, or at least within his department, like, I don't know, I guess it's incredible to think that he's like some deep thing where they're like, he's part of some program where they're just like brainwashing him to believe all this information, which led him to leak it, which gets more credibility. And then you can go and spread the lies that they want. And all he has to do is tell the truth. But his truth is already altered.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's sort of the nature of how government and intelligence agencies work with journalists in general.
Well, and thinking back to like what Bob Lazar was talking about, as far as like being shown so many crazy things and not knowing what to make of it or what's true and what's not.
Right.
And it's a way of them finding leakers.
Right, because if you put little tiny trackable information nuggets with slightly altered stories for everyone.
Yeah.
And so depending on what version leaks, you're able to trace that back to who leaked it.
Right.
Type thing.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, what is it? And maybe that's one of the reasons he's being careful about some of the things too, about not fully, because maybe that it is like some of the stuff he's talking about could be just willfully or he has already sifted that stuff out. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Lou?
Yeah. Like maybe he knew which ones were real and fake based on his own discovery.
The thing about Lou is his position. All right, so if you take him seriously, right, and if you're not one of these people who just thinks he's just total disinformation agent, absolutely can't trust anything he says. So if you take anything of his word, the program he was a part of with OSAP and ATIP were not part of the legacy program.
Right.
So this was not like
agency.
Bob Lazar, because Bob Lazar, if his story is true, he was being recruited into the legacy program to actually deal with craft and bodies.
To actually be one of the engineers and physicists working on it. Yeah.
So he's part of that group that they need to control through information in that way. Right. Lou, on the other hand, was part of another secret program, not actually connected to the legacy program. OSAP was funded by Congress for a task.
To find out the information, right?
Right. Well, and in the interview with Lou that Jesse Michaels does, he actually expands on what OSAP was actually originally intended to do. And apparently it was originally intended to take possession of...
To actually retrieve this stuff?
Yeah, to actually take possession of the stuff out of the aerospace contractors, bring it back into the government. And
so they're supposed to do the handovers.
They were supposed to basically be repossessing it into government
property.
Into government property, right? But it was they were blocked and stifled, and they ended up doing investigation from the outside rather than being able to
go inside and get all the information they needed.
So, but all of that would have happened before Lou was there. But apparently that's like the true origin of what OSAP was supposed to be, which is why its acronym stands for what it does, which is like advanced aerospace weapons.
It's weapons system.
Right. Something. Yeah, but anyway. But anyway, Lou's position in OSAP was not one of these people who was like brought in and like, here, we're the people who've been hiding UFOs all the time. Here's the truth, right? Like his was like stepping into an office of government workers who were not part of the legacy program, but were trying to investigate it and investigate the phenomenon and figure out the truth, right? So it's not exactly like Bob Lazar where like he's told these weird like lies and stuff in the same way, because it's not like they had access to the truth. They were investigating the truth. It's kind of different.
Well, the point I was kind of making is like if these private companies that may have this technology, like they have the capabilities, they have the manpower because they're able to do all this stuff privately without anybody overseeing it, and they can infiltrate governments even and be able to have positions from within to lead and misdirect So instead of the government itself being the ones who are implanting somebody to like give him the false information, it could be the companies itself trying to lead him off the trail.
So you're saying like the legacy program may have like infiltrated their program, to try and misinform and misdirect.
Maybe not the program itself, but or just people in his sphere
Oh, sure.
are around
Yeah.
these things that could be part of the legacy program.
Interesting, yeah. Because it's unclear, other than those people we sort of uncovered last week, it's unclear who exactly has, within the government, who has that information. Like, we know
That might have already been weeded out decades ago.
I mean, there's got to be someone, though. I think obviously
sort of
the people who run the special access programs. I've heard Dick Cheney. I've heard George Bush, or George Senior.
I can see Dick Cheney and like one of these like
Bush Senior being like such a
military
career
industrial
CIA
complex
person that speculated that he was read in on it because
I could see like intelligence and like military being read in on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who would enforce compliance with these private companies. Because it's federal contracts. It's they have full right to like use their might to retrieve these crafts if they wanted to. So if they invoked that right and went in and said, nope, this is ours now, you guys don't have any right to it, unless the private contractors or the private company, whatever one it might have been, is so powerful now because of the access to that technology. They've been able to like because they have the actual knowledge.
Yeah, I mean,
or the technology itself. I mean,
they're still the government and they got all the guns, though.
Yeah, I mean, the private company could also have a lot of guns, private militaries.
Like, but it's not like they're
contractors.
You're essentially like that line of thinking is essentially like they're trying to conduct a coup.
I'm really saying that they're probably connected as far as like all the like being at the top. Like, there's probably all of them are just read in and they don't need to have the conflict. So there's no. It's not like the government's actively trying to do that. For a reason.
We just have to be careful, like when we're using the term "the government," right? Because this topic and what the aspect of it we're talking about here, there's so many like little fiefdoms and departments, and like it is a very big, complicated
and they
body.
don't all talk to each other,
and they don't all agree. And so, like, you've got some that, and this is why some of these terms and acronyms end up being useful, is because you have to be able to like distinguish pieces, right? You can't just paint with the government.
And that's why we're talking about, obviously, because Congress is part of the government, but they're not read in on this stuff. So there's clearly like sectors of the government.
Whoever are like the overseers of the legacy program, right? Like,
are they government though? That's kind of where I was going.
Whoever's like the administrators of it, like whoever's like the top dogs, I feel like it's got to be a mixture of people in like long established like intelligence, probably. Like I would expect intelligence more than military, and I would expect obviously the contractors themselves, but yeah,
that's what I mean. It's like it's the company probably holding a lot of the,
but they have to at least have some connection in government, because they aren't the ones that get to decide what special access programs are approved, which special access programs people get access to. That's a wing of the government, and so they at least have to have representatives in the people who manage special access programs. So they would at least have to, and those positions change over the years, right? Like whoever's actually running that department.
Yeah.
So they have to have at least enough connections to make sure that people who aren't going to mess with their program get into those posts.
Which I mean probably isn't terribly difficult. You find a kid who's going through like, right,
but you as a contractor, it's not your job to fill those posts. That's a That's you as Boeing don't get to choose the person who oversees special access projects. So you need someone on the inside of the Pentagon to
make those
be
decisions.
those people.
Yep.
So I don't think the contractors are at the top of the pyramid there. I think they are among that, though.
But I also, if they're the one, like, 'cause
They're-
the reason
they're-
they're able
they're
to
a
deny
key-
access in some, especially to the people who are supposed to be overseeing those programs, like that seems like.
Well, if you
Like
remember,
it's
they were
because
threatening
it's a contractor.
Admiral. They were threatening Admiral Wilson with losing stars,
That's what I mean. Yeah.
which Boeing can't strip stars of a general. Like someone in the Pentagon has to do that.
But I mean, still, the people who are denying and like making the decision to deny could be the contractors themselves.
Right. Then that's what we talked about last week, is that they essentially
setting the rules.
after the one time where they almost leaked because someone came looking into their stuff. Then they got it rearranged so that they now have ultimate final say over who's let in, right? So they do have that, but that doesn't mean that like they're the top of the food chain, right? Like,
Sure.
they're still not the ones that set up or control the actual system of whether or not their project is even deemed classified. Someone could theoretically come along and
Say,
be like,
"Nope, no more."
you are no longer classified, right? But
You would think, but all I'm saying is the connection runs deep, right?
Right.
The government and private sector connection runs deep, and it runs into the past where over time it could have lost as much governmental oversight because the people that they trusted was shortening on the government list. Like they saw that the government, eventually Congress and all these other people were, as time went on, they were going to push to leak it. That to get all the information out eventually, right? That's what the government could do. So, and to avoid that, they shipped all that. All of that is now on a contractor, and so they're able to have plausible deniability when it comes to
they put it
keep compartmentalizing the information.
They put it in the contractors
all I'm
because
saying is over time that the people in the government that may have been overseeing it could have dwindled down to maybe a few now. Maybe there are still some now, but because there might have been more. There might have been a whole like lots of people had to have been involved in the Roswell crash. So lots of people would have known
been more, right?
So there would have been more at that point. So now maybe it's dwindled so much that's why it's so easy to like hide, because only maybe one or two people actually have the full access knowledge in the government. And they're the ones that are going to take it to their deathbed or pass it to a new generation of government to people, because they don't want everybody to know. That's clear that they don't want anybody, like full departments of the government, to know, because then you have to deal with all these people.
Right.
And whether they're going to keep it quiet.
But they couldn't look, I get where you're going, and I understand what you're saying. The problem with that is if you're those private contractors, you can't allow all of your like internal government connections to go away. Otherwise, you then also lose power over whether or not you're classified. You need to maintain active people in there who continue to cover for you from the inside.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe
otherwise,
it's not
someone
as hard
like
for them
someone's
to
going
find.
to come along, be a new appointee in charge of special access programs. Another Admiral Wilson type person may come along, and then they won't anymore have the influence to threaten someone with stripping their stars away, because they have no one on the inside who's in on their program to pull influence with to threaten you.
All I'm saying, though, is what if that information is no longer in these special access programs, and that information is now privately held by a corporation?
It is,
and
it's
because
both.
of that,
It's both special access.
But it doesn't have to be necessarily. I'm saying this out of yes, back then when all this information was, and even as far as recently, like some of the information could be held within the special access programs. But if the private company has the secrets,
I
and
think
they're
what you're
privately
missing
funding,
is that.
Why does the company need the government to dictate it
anyway?
anyway?
What you're missing here is that the special access program is part of the private cover-up. it is a special access program to be granted information to go work with the private company, right? So they've created a special access program that funds Lockheed to do this work.
Right, but what I'm saying is maybe they're at a point where they don't need the funding from the government anymore. They can do this.
Well, I'm
on
sure
their
they
own,
don't,
especially
but-
if they. So why would they be beholden to the government if they're a private company and they're entitled to their secrets? And over time, the ownership of whatever technology this is,
they have
has
to have
been
enough
gray. Has it been in a gray area?
Because look what's happening right now in Congress. Look what's happening right now. They're trying, like they actually actively this year tried to put language in the NDAA to actually claim eminent domain over the craft and bodies.
Right.
And they got that language taken out. But you only get that language taken out if you still have people in government who are covering for you. You need military people, you need generals, you need Congress people, right? Like they can't.
I'm not denying
They
that
can't
there
cut
are some,
all ties. Like there has to be people in the government who are covering this stuff up.
All I'm saying is it doesn't. It's not like a program office, right? Like what I'm saying is like yes, there probably are people weeded throughout the government that have access, but they don't have to. It's not like a central thing where someone can go, oh, these are the people that should know all the information on X special access program, you know. Unless there is, like that's where I don't know. Maybe there is, like maybe they're all sitting in one office together, but.
Probably not. Like if you remember on the
That's why it's
Wilson
so hard to
Davis
get, and they
memo,
can just continue to.
there was like they showed them the bigot list, right? So the bigot list is like is the full list of everyone who has ever been read into the program. Right. So they have exactly the names of everyone who has been in the know.
Right. So there's probably is a list, and I'm not denying that they probably do. There's probably plenty of people within the government that do. My only point is it's also possible that the private entity that has access to this technology, because it's not the government, that private company is not necessarily beholden unless they have.
Right. Well, that's the whole reason it went there in the first place.
That's what I mean. Is
It was
they
the
have
government.
full control over
it was the government that put it in the private companies because that was how you avoid Freedom of Information Act requests through that and through the Special Access Program protection. Right?
And the people that are helping them, they're maybe read into the Special Access Program, but are they privy to all the knowledge? No, probably not.
Right.
So they're on board with the cause of keeping it secret, but they don't know everything about.
They may not know why. I see what you're saying.
You know, so they may be able to keep the thing going without needing to know why they're doing it. They just need to know that it's very important. We'll show you enough to show you how important it is, and then just make sure you do your job. And that's totally likely. But as far as actual access, like it could very well be that the private sector and, you know, said chosen people that actually know all the information that are, you know, part of the legacy program from.
I don't think the CIA and the intelligence companies would have allowed themselves to be read out of this stuff.
Yeah. I could see that too. Yeah, like they would pass down the information as anything else would.
That's all. Like that's what they deal in is secret information, right? Like I don't think they would have allowed themselves to be read out of it.
Yeah, I want to see more on Mike Baker. He's been on Joe's podcast a bit.
Does he ever talk about UFOs on there?
He's not like a big UFO guy, but he's starting to like come around. But I don't think he's like one of the people that would be read in on something like that. But
yeah. No,
it's not like every agent's gonna.
He wouldn't have need to know. You gotta have need to know. Cool.
But it's so fascinating.
Well, we went way over.
Did we? All right, we're gonna finish. We'll do a whole long section next time.
Keep going in. All right. This is another
segment.
Stevie song called Grit.
it down, think it's not enough. Don't give in, never gas you up. Never lose sight, never lose the luck. Keep it all in, never spew my guts. Let the fire burn, let it burn me up. Burn me up, burn me up. Take a step back, let me soak it in. If I fall off, let me go again. Keep the fire blaze with a lose or win, but never lose. Never listen to the doomsayers. Do no harm, prove 'em wrong, prove 'em wrong.
Hop back into this. So this next section, he's going to be going over like just a sort of short summary of like a collection of different sightings, and this is all part of the cases he's learning about and whatnot.
Okay.
So March 1952, 2 fiery discs zigzagged low over uranium mines in the Belgian Congo, where much of the raw material for the U.S.'s first atomic bombs was extracted. At one point, the UAP stopped over an open part of the mine, as if to peer into or perhaps map it. They zigzagged away. The fighter plane gave chase but couldn't keep up with the craft's erratic changes in elevation. Finally, the UAP left the human pilot in the dust, racing toward Lake Tanganyika, yeah. The second deepest freshwater lake in the world. At a speed close to the speed of sound, the pilot surmised that the objects had to be robotic because no human pilot would have been able to survive the G-forces of a craft moving in such a way, quickly, erratically, and going from a lulling standstill to an impossible rate of speed in seconds. UAP activity around uranium mines and large bodies of water continues to this day.
So even without things were robotic back in 1952, huh?
Yeah, pretty interesting. July 1952, Harry S. Truman was president. Multiple UAP resembling lights penetrating downtown D.C. buzzed the White House and Capital City over 2 consecutive weekends. So we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There were hundreds of eyewitnesses, and many local newspapers put the story on their cover. The strange objects did what no known aircraft then or since can do. They soundlessly parked themselves in the air, then zipped away at incredible speeds. When Air Force pilots pursued them, the objects abruptly changed direction and disappeared. In some cases, the lights split in two, each piece going in a different direction. One pilot shot at them, later justifying his actions as a last-ditch measure because he knew that his state-of-the-art fighter aircraft had no hope of overtaking them. Interestingly, I heard reports that when the pilot shot at one of the objects, a piece of one craft fell to the ground and was recovered. But after a thorough investigation, officials chalked up the DC incident to flocks of birds.
Come on. Maybe pterodactyls.
October 1954, fans at a soccer game in Florence, Italy, spied a smooth white cigar or egg-shaped vehicle over a stadium. Same deal. No obvious wings. The game stopped while onlookers watched as the object shot around the sky. Are we supposed to believe 10,000 rabid Italian soccer fans hallucinated the whole episode? When witnesses described these sightings, they expressed shock because nothing in their experience of watching conventional aircraft matches what they've just seen. It is often said that UAP defy physics. I don't agree with that. I think UAP defy our current understanding of physics. And the challenge is reconciling that outwardly. They do not possess any of the same characteristics we use to describe an aircraft. No wings, no control surfaces, no obvious forms of propulsion, no rivets in the aircraft skin, no cockpits. They simply do not resemble the planes and helicopters we're used to seeing overhead. Instead, they appear as disembodied lights, various shapes described as disc, triangle, a cigar, a boomerang, etc. Dude.
I was gonna say real quick, just all that description right there reminded me of I can't remember where I heard it from, but like the idea that these orbs, they always start with like a light. You see a light, or because usually that's what signifies it. You see like a triangle shaped light or like a curved, surface. Other than like the Tic Tac incident, and some of the other footage. But like these orbs can manifest or could be potentially just like some sort of like energy frequency, and whatever you see it as is like a reflection of your mind, right? It's like some sort of like, it just manifests in something that you can understand. So like a disc-shaped thing, if you've been told that it's a disc shape, like over time, like we all hear it, and that's what you ascribe to the phenomena, but in other cultures, it could be something else.
Right.
And, they have
like the Romans saying they saw shields in the sky
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's obviously the factor of like
them being able to see the night sky more.
Well, the language you have at your disposal is based on the culture and your understanding, right? And so also whatever language and whatever your cultural understanding may affect what you even interpret the thing to be, because your brain, like your pattern matching machines, right? So
you're incapable of fully creating something out of scratch that you're not incapable of perceiving it, but you're incapable of making sense of it, which we know that what we're intaking is way different than what we're experiencing.
Yeah. But in the case of an Italian, an entire
soccer
stadium all stopping the game to watch the thing in the sky, like there's something going on there.
For sure. Yeah. Some sort of portal opened up above them.
Now, as we embarked on the Cold War in the 1950s, the U.S. government became overwhelmed by civilian reports of flying saucers like the one Lonnie Zamora saw. I skipped the Lonnie Zamora case that he talked about earlier, but
I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous one. Investigating the backlog of cases threatened to be a massive drain on manpower and technological resources at a time when the U.S. felt compelled to keep its eyes fixed on the Soviet Union. Solution: we palmed the UAP problem off on Project Blue Book. In the 90s, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, ex-KGB leaders informed the world about cigar or rod-shaped UFO interacting with several MiG fighter pilots, allegedly even obtaining gun camera footage of one.
That'd be cool to see.
Yeah. March 1966, neighborhoods in Michigan were terrorized over several days by strange craft that dove, hovered, climbed, and disappeared, only to reappear. One of these objects briefly landed in a nearby swamp, When a farmer and his son went to investigate, they observed a pyramidal object that was wingless, jetless, propellerless. How could it fly? At the insistence of a leading Michigan congressman named Gerald Ford, Dr. Hynek's Project Blue Book reviewed the matter thoroughly and unfortunately announced that the witnesses had seen swamp gas. A clear
Hynek. God.
A clear cover-up. It was an effort to tell the American people there's nothing to see here, folks. A report prepared by Australia's Department of Defense in the 1970s summed up the Blue Book strategy as follows. By erecting a facade of ridicule, the U.S. hoped to allay public alarm, reduce the possibility of the Soviets taking advantage of UAP mass sightings for either psychological or actual warfare purposes, and act as a cover for the real U.S. program of developing vehicles that emulate UAP performances. Australia is one of the Five Eyes intelligence partners. That is, 5 nations, including the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and the US, that have had a long history of sharing intelligence cooperatively. We can rely on their frank assessment of the American program. Bottom line, Professor Hynek wanted to do real science. The Air Force wanted him to debunk UAP, silence witnesses, and beat the truth back into the shadows. And so we got tales of swamp gas and flocks of birds and weather balloons. To his credit, Hynek later regretted the role he played in suppressing evidence under the aegis of the U.S. Air Force. Though it's not common knowledge among civilians, UAP have trifled with nuclear weapons all over the world, bringing the global superpowers close to war. There are many events I'm not legally able to speak about, but there are some I can. March 1967, UAP resembling zigzagging stars appeared over Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, one of the objects emitting a bright red light hovering over missile silos. Shortly after, multiple U.S. government Minutemen intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBM nuclear warheads, went offline one after the other, inoperable. September 1971, despite almost all of the planet's population having no clue, a treaty was signed by the U.S. and Soviet Union titled Agreement on Measurements to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War between the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Article 3 of the treaty states, the parties undertake to notify each other immediately in the event of detection by missile warning systems of unidentified objects, or in the event of signs of interference with these systems or related communication facilities. If such occurrences could create a risk of outbreak of nuclear war between two countries. This language is a direct result of UAP interference with nuclear weapons in the U.S. and Soviet Union, and both nations being well aware of the stakes for humanity.
Yeah.
So essentially, they signed a treaty between each other.
To make sure that they be like, hey, was that you? Yep,
Right.
that was us. Nope, that wasn't us.
They just want to make sure one of them detecting a UFO wasn't misinterpreted as a freaking nuclear missile launch.
Right, some malfunction didn't, cause them to see a warning, but they want to double check it. Yeah,
right. So
and there's that famous or somewhat famous case of like a Russian person getting the signal and making not firing it, making a gut decision,
and then finding out that it was
he basically just could have saved the world in that one decision.
Right. It was like a bad reading or something, but he didn't know it at the time, and his protocols told him he should have launched, but he didn't.
Yeah. What if it was a UAP who did it? Who knows?
Yeah. Right. Very well could be, honestly. United Kingdom, 1980. UAP appeared outside of the night sky out of the night sky over a very sensitive joint UK-US military facility near Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. These UAP hovered specifically over an underground bunker where two allies had secretly stockpiled nuclear weapons. How did these airborne visitors know the location of the weapons? And what was their intention? Multiple servicemen saw the UAP up close and have since gone public despite being told not to talk about it. Very few people know that all the communications on the base went to flash override, which completely shuts down all communication lines so that only the President of the United States can communicate directly with someone on the base. The flash override protocol was designed to give the presidents the ability to control nuclear weapons in the event of a surprise attack. After the event, it was reported by servicemen on the base that an identified private plane landed on a runway just outside the base, and that a group of men said to be from a defense contractor exited the plane and were driven onto the base. The same men were later seen loading crates onto the plane before leaving for the U.S. The next day, the servicemen who were eyewitnesses were called to the base's office of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, OSI. Some of the servicemen have since revealed what happened in that room. They were told to never speak about what they saw. They were administered some sort of drug and hypnotized, presumably to distort their memories. The ones I personally spoke to said there was someone from the CIA in the room with the men from the OSI. Years later, one of the servicemen saw a photo of a certain CIA official who had long worked on the UAP topic and claimed that the CIA official was in the room the day after the event. More than 30 years later, the late Senator John McCain successfully had the service records of one of the service members involved in the incident declassified. As a result, 2 witnesses were awarded permanent disability by the U.S. government for their involvement and injury at Rendlesham. Yeah. Ukraine, 1982. UAP flew over Bielo Air Force Base in the former Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Seconds later, the launch sequence for the base's missiles switched on without any human...
I think that's the one we were talking about.
Entering the launch codes. Operators frantically rushed to shut the system down, but could not. When the launch sequence reached its very last rung, it shut down of its own accord. We know that this happened. On more than one occasion, the U.S. dispatched bombers in anticipation of a nuclear attack by the Soviet Union before the U.S. realized that UAP had caused the Soviets to ready their missiles in error. Those nuclear missiles activated were pointed at us. That's how close we've come to disaster. On other occasions, UAP have taken U.S. nuclear weapons offline, so we couldn't launch if the president had given the order. Pretty crazy.
Or it did happen. We're living in an alternate reality.
All right. And then he starts talking a little bit about like theory and stuff.
Ultra-terrestrial model.
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to read this little lead up here, and then we'll go into the paper. So let's step back into the shoes of the rational, educated human. Of course, life exists on other planets, these people say. It would be fatuous to think that we're the only intelligent life forms in existence. They point to such theories as the Drake equation, which purports to mathematically predict the number of probable civilizations in the universe. These folks always add that visitations to Earth by those beings are virtually impossible because of the vast distances they'd have to traverse to reach our backyards. After all, the cosmos is incomprehensibly huge. Although estimated to be approximately 13.8 billion years old, the observable universe is nearly 27 billion light years across. And if that isn't mind-boggling enough, some current astrophysicists and science believe that 90% of the actual universe lies beyond that. In essence, there's a whole lot of stuff in our universe, but the distances are too big to be traversable for humanity as of now. The argument that space is too big for us to interact with alien species seems logical. The distances in our solar system are indeed daunting, making human travel from Earth to Mars alone a multi-year, 140 million mile one-way journey that we have not yet achieved. Are visitors from other planets so advanced that they've cracked faster than light paradigm and are capable of traveling to Earth from well outside our solar system? Or are they, as many theorists think, already here with a long history of intervening in human affairs while remaining hidden from us just beyond our reach? In one of his academic papers, eventually published in the Journal of Cosmology, Hal enumerated all the possibilities for these beings. The paper is called Ultra-Terrestrial Models. And so I found that paper, and I think it would be cool for us to go over it. So I'll link this on our website so you guys can actually download it yourself if you want to go over it. But this is Journal of Cosmology,
Looks
volume 29. Yeah. Number 1. Does it have a date on this? Nope. Ultra-Terrestrial Models, H.E. Puthoff, Ph.D., Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin, Westlake Hills, Texas. Abstract. Under consideration in this paper, there are 2 seminal statements and their concomitants currently unknown as follows. 1, there is an unidentified phenomenon interacting with the current human population on Earth. 2, it is currently unknown whether the phenomenon is exclusively extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional, crypto-terrestrial, demonic or jinn, or proto/ancient humans, time travelers, etc., or some combination or mutation of any or all of those. However, it appears highly likely that the phenomenon per se is not constituted exclusively of members of the current human population. In this paper, we address the above under the overarching theme ultra-terrestrials in order to develop a template to be matched against data at hand and that may be procured in the future. Keywords, extraterrestrial. Oh, yeah, that's just for the paper keywords. Okay. So, ultra-terrestrial models, background. As one takes a decades-long view at the unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, UFO topic, it is easy to become frustrated by what one sees as a lack of robust progress in establishing sure and certain ironclad data points about even the most fundamental of issues. These issues prompt such key questions as follows. Is the phenomenon predominantly nuts and bolts, psychological, or metaphysical, assuming that such distinctions can be made? That's a good question. Is the source of the phenomena predominantly terrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, which included in that would be ancient occult groups, isolated pre-diluvial high-tech society, stranded ETs or gods, or extraterrestrial, assuming that distinctions between these alternatives are meaningful?
Yeah.
Has the phenomenon ramped up in our era, or has it been essentially constant over millennia? Are oft-time related topics such as claimed abductions, crop circles, and animal mutilations truly related, or are they separate categories of phenomena?
Yeah.
Are institutions such as governments truly that much more knowledgeable than we are, even if only in certain protected domains, or are they essentially in the same position as we are, give or take some hard data in hand. Point
It goes
2.
right into the critiques.
Yeah, critique. As we critique our position vis-a-vis these issues, 3 factors stand out as weaknesses that potentially could be addressed by developing new strategies. They are: 1, data gathering is essentially passive. Typically, events are reported and data are gathered and analyzed. This constitutes essentially a reactive as opposed to a proactive mode. This is not meant as a pejorative statement. Astrophysicists find themselves in the same situation. Even seemingly proactive movements, such as John Greenwald Jr.'s FOIA government documents search in the public arena, or attempted collection of the detritus or of classified programs under some special protected conditions, simply constitute efforts to cause government to release data to passive, ever hopeful recipients. The ball is still in someone else's court. Other, more proactive measures could be taken, ranging from relatively prosaic, so setting up all weather, all sky optical IR monitoring stations, through the more tech intensive approach, like magnetic disturbances, RF gigahertz detectors, multivariable monitoring suites, exoarchaeological investigations. That's an interesting point. To the arcane, search for evidence of anomalous manipulation of human genetic structure, stretching to the esoteric, remote viewing, telepathic contact.
Seems like all the stuff they're doing at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is an interesting point, is that in our attempt to figure out what's going on, like, we're very kind of stuck in a passive mode.
Yep, just let the instruments pick it all up. You're not proactively going after it. There's nothing to follow.
Right, and you can't make a UFO sighting happen.
Unless you're Chris Bledsoe.
Unless you're Chris Bledsoe, so...
They need to be studying him. They need to be out there with all their gear right next to him any day.
Mm-hmm.
Just point all their stuff at it.
Yeah. The other critique, the next critique, by and large, our models/hypotheses are relatively circumscribed. As stated in entry 2 above, although interested parties tend to be proponents of what would appear to be a wide range of hypotheses, ranging from it's all psychological, check your DSMV, through interdimensional time travelers and angels, to grays and advanced spacecraft from Zeta Reticuli. There are additional options that, though mentioned in passing in the literature, are not taken very seriously and therefore go relatively unresearched. These include such categories as a hidden community of ETs/gods, possibly stranded here millennia ago, a la Zechariah Sitchin's The Earth Chronicle series. Mm-hmm. Isolated remnants of a pre-diluvial high-tech society, the Atlantis myth, or ancient occult group who happened to stumble on new energy sources and control of gravity, and including a post-World War II covert cabal of the military-industrial complex variety, Dolan's breakaway civilization concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We consider some of these options in more detail below.
That's an interesting thing that I haven't really addressed in myself, is like that idea of like, we have the tech. There's a whole subsection of humans that have had this knowledge since the 40s and have since broken off. They're like, best way to save humans is to not tell them, let them live it out. We'll go take our tech and we'll go do our own thing.
Right.
And we'll just be gone. We have enough people here. We can survive. We can populate. We can go and live off. That's the way to do it. Don't tell anybody. And then come back and check on them every so often.
You ever read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged?
Yeah.
You have?
No, I haven't read it, no.
Oh, okay. Well, in the book, there's this dude who takes well, there's like a group of industrialists who are like pure capitalists, who like believe in freedom of like free markets and stuff. And her like, anyway, they decide to let like the corrupting socialistic like leech economy that the U.S. is turning into fend for itself, and they all disappear. And they all get together and start their own society in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, and they put like a holographic like
dome around them.
Yeah, so that no one can find them, and like
it's like
they're
Wakanda.
Like they're living in this super high tech breakaway civilization.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you wouldn't even necessarily have to have like spacecraft to get off the Earth. You can just do it within. That's an example of it. Or is it just like a understanding of what that might mean without the understanding that there might be technology to get you off the planet? Yeah. Elon Musk, if you're part of that, dude, what have you done?
Yeah, but it's interesting to see that Hal Puthoff is taking ideas like Zecharia Sitchin's and Graham Hancock's ideas of a pre-diluvial high-tech society seriously.
Yeah.
Because that's also a pretty valid solution to the UFO problem. Like, what if the pre-flood society were super high tech and they saved whatever species they could from the last, the end of whatever caused the end of the ice age. And that was the sort of Noah's Ark myth that survived till today, but it was on their spaceships instead of a big boat.
Or, this is just adding layers to it because it's fun, their society grew from another point, right? So that, like, if we believe to these cyclical times on Earth, right, where it kind of wipes clean and comes back, maybe Noah's flood was from their ancestors, and they built their own form of it in their technology to save them from the next one, because they remembered, they were able to maintain the story and keep everybody in the loop from the last time they were reset, and they didn't lie. And maybe that was one of the epochs, and then they had to pass that story on, because it was what they grew up with, and it endures. It's the idea of saving what you can to rebuild after one of these calamities.
There's a sci-fi book I read recently called Seven Eves. And the premise of the book is that, I forget what reason, but essentially the moon exploded and it's slowly breaking apart and it's slowly descending its orbit towards Earth. And there will come a time when it all starts entering the Earth's atmosphere, and it's going to superheat the Earth from all of the impacts, and every living thing is going to die. And so they come up with this like survival plan, and they basically send these people out into space to like live on the chunks of the moon that won't fall for like millennia still in the future. And
then to come back.
Then it like fast forwards generations and stuff, right? And then they come back to the Earth and they find people
who survived it.
Right.
That's
essentially a breakaway civilization, right? Like it could have been some sort of similar scenario where like some people did this quote unquote Noah's Ark,
right?
Whereas other people, who had somehow preserved their advanced civilization through other means, right?
Yep. There was a show I watched called 300, and it had this exact same premise. I think you might enjoy it. There's some corny acting in it a little bit, but it's actually pretty good, the whole storytelling of it. But it's basically the same idea. There was too much nuclear war. A part of the human race, we had the technology at the time to go into space, and they were on this ark. They called it the Ark, and it was just floating around the Earth, waiting, orbiting the Earth, and it was detecting and like had radar, and it was waiting for the Earth's like radiation levels to get down to a certain point. But there was some malfunction in their ship, And so they knew that this would be the last, and they had been up there for generations, like 100 years or so. And then what made them come back down early was their ship was about to, they had no other chance. The ship was going to malfunction and like lose oxygen. There was some like malfunction in their oxygen system, scrubbing system. So they had to send down these prisoners.
I think I watched the first episode, but
yeah, they send down these prisoners, which are basically
the bad
kids.
acting turned me off.
Yeah, I mean, it gets better when the stories develop a little bit, and you see there's more like chemistry within the cast. But the first season was pretty rough. But yeah, no, it's the same idea, a breakaway society. But then when they landed, there was people who went underground to survive, and they had they were still the United States government, and all the people living down there had like a strict, different like society.
What was interesting about Seven Eves is because they went forward so many generations. Like they went way in the future, right? And like they had to use like genetic modification to keep themselves alive in space. Yeah. And so humanity had like evolved or like through genetic manipulation into like different prototypes or like different archetypes of people. So some were like these big tough types, some were these like skinny, super smart, and like there was like different new sub races of human.
Wow.
And when they came back, they were like faced with a whole new different type of human. So
like physically, completely different,
which could also, coincide with like what we're talking about here with the reason why all of these sort of beings
are humanoid looking.
Right? And seemingly interested in dealing with us on a genetic level. Why there's breeding programs, according to the abductees.
Yeah, we just need the information, man. We can connect all our theories together.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going here, and I'll probably cut off here at some point because we're already at 2 hours, unless we want to go extra long.
Go a little longer.
Because this is 15 pages, and we're on page 6. So.
Maybe we'll just read a little bit more then.
Okay. So, yeah, we had left off. He said we're going to cover some of these in more detail below. 3, and we're still on the critiques, right?
Yep.
The third critique of current methods is that analysis/speculation, not forensics, constitutes the present core modus operandi. As the various hypotheses are generated and pursued, hypothesis generation, the data are gathered, considerable intellectual effort goes into attempting a fit between the two, hypothesis testing. This is certainly a healthy activity, deriving as it does from the instinctive and productive human urge to reduce ambiguity into interpreting one's surroundings. However, this approach could profit by incorporating elements of a more forensic gumshoe style, as in criminalistics and intelligence work. The very fact that so many hypotheses remain on the table regarding the source of the phenomenon clearly indicates that forensic work to date has been inadequate to even eliminate certain options. Hypothesis elimination. All 3 forms of hypotheses handling are required. So, yeah, he's basically saying we should not just try and use scientific theories and hypotheses to fit the data. We should also be using like investigative forensic work to try and like if you really take a theory seriously and like draw it all out, like you can start doing forensic work to try and eliminate
at least eliminate the possibilities.
Kind of like police do, like trying to eliminate suspects, right?
Yep.
In a murder investigation. Why don't we cut it there and then we'll move forward? Because that's a good point where he starts changing topics here.
This is Hal Puthoff's paper, right?
This is Hal Puthoff's paper, exactly.
Cool. There you go. Big
there
red
we
circle.
are.
We start here.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, y'all. If you guys like the topic or have any information you guys want to share about us, you guys can email us directly at hosts@dualitycheck.net. You can hit us up there if you have any kind of messaging. You want to find out any information about our episodes dropping, you can follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Those are our two main ones that we post on. If you're listening on the podcast platform, you can rate and review. If you want, we'll have all of our show links and notes and anything like that on the podcast platform. You can also find everything having to do with the episode on our website, which is dualitycheck.net. And if you want to see all the information put together all in one spot, you can go to YouTube, and all the videos we watch or any of the links will all be there in the transcription or what we have in the show notes there.
Yeah.
And then you can watch the videos and see our images as you watch.
On the website, I actually put like the video embedded players. So like,
so you can mini play it.
Yeah, you can actually like click through all the videos we talk through on an episode right from our website.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So
that's another good one if you want to get it direct and you don't want to use one of these platforms. Awesome.
Sweet. We will see you guys next week for some more Lou Elizondo, some more talk about UFOs. And we'll see you then.
Later.
Adios.